Welcome. Today I'll show you how to make these cardboard molds and how you can use them to produce your very own concrete weight plates, like this one. Now I want you to know that these molds are not going to poop out the most aesthetically pleasing plates, and this will also be a time-consuming process. So if you want to save a day or two, you don't have to make these, and you can buy nice plastic ones instead. Links in the description to where you can buy some, as well as the basic pros and cons of each. So after you see how I make these, you can decide which molds you want to use. This intro is too long. Let's begin. First things first are going to be the molds. And for that, you're going to need a bunch of cardboard. You're going to need rolls of duct tape. You're going to need a 2-inch pipe of some sort of material. And I chose this, a VBC Valencia pipe 2-inch ABS all wall stitch 40 DMV, as well as some sort of tarp. Tools you're going to need: some type of handheld wire snippers, skeezors, a knife to cut cardboard with, writing utensils, some sort of device to draw large circles with, such as the holy ruler. A saw, I'll be using the miter saw, some sort of measuring apparatus, a scale, some sort of mixing device for your concrete. I'm using a trowel and a shovel because it's cheaper than a power tool one, and a cheap paintbrush you don't really care about. For the actual material of the weight itself, you're gonna need some sort of concrete, as well as some place to mix it, and some type of tool to smooth it out with. Some optional, yet highly recommended things you should add to the concrete to strengthen it will be rebar. I bought 8 3/8 inch by 48 inch pieces, so that way I can use the entire thing inside my 45 pounders, as well as a chicken net. No one calls it a chicken net. It's chicken wire. I bought 2 of them because I couldn't find any concrete fibers and I didn't feel like ordering them online. And I'm hoping this sort of mesh network is going to interlock with the concrete and sort of do the same job as the fibers, and preventing it from crumbling away is easy. I also got this 11-pound bucket of trowel patch for that black coating that you see in the thumbnail, and I'll explain why near the end of the video. I'm only going to be making 45s, 25s, 10, and 5-pound weights. And these dimensions will be for the cardboard molds themselves. So for the 45, this mold is going to produce you a plate with an 18-inch diameter here in green. Now actual machined or cast 45-pound plates will usually have a diameter anywhere from 17.5 to 17.7 inches. I just made these ones 18 because 18 is an easier number to look at. But if that half an inch makes a difference to you, you can just take your radius and shrink it by 1/4 of an inch, and that will in turn give you a diameter of half an inch less. This dotted line dimension in black is going to be the radius of the plate, in this case 9 inches. Then here in red, this 2 inches will be the diameter of the inner tube or pipe that will be seated in the middle of the plate where the barbell is going to slide through. And that 2 inches will come from the inside diameter of the pipe, not the outside. That's how these pipes are measured. 2 inches will be what an Olympic-sized barbell can fit through. This will be the same size for every plate. So if you don't have a standard Olympic barbell, make sure you measure and buy your pipes accordingly. This other dimension in black of 58 inches is your circumference, which will be the length of the rectangle of cardboard you need to cut out in order to bend and form into a circle. Then this 2 3/4 inches in blue is going to be the width of your circumference rectangle, as well as how tall the mold will be. Then finally, this 22 inches in purple is not super important, but it will be the length and width of the square of cardboard you can cut to be the base of your mold. There will be a link in the description to where you can view or download these dimensions, as well as this reminder thing with what everything is. So take a look at this. I won't go over the rest of the dimensions to save time. The building process is the same. And if you have buckets, you can use these instead of making a 10-pound mold, because they're roughly 10 inches in diameter at the bottom anyway. With that boring stuff out of the way, let's make a mold. In order to save your time, we are just going to make a mold for 45 pounds. So the first thing you need to do is cut out a square of cardboard that's going to be 22 inches long by 22 inches wide. Then use some type of method to draw a circle with an 18-inch diameter. If you decide to use a ruler with the holes in it, put a pin at whatever point you want to be your center, and then go out 9 inches, and then trace around that pin to make your circle with 18 inches as its diameter. Or if you like tedious things, you can place the ruler at the center point again and draw an 18-inch line, and then using that same center point, rotate the ruler slightly, draw another 18-inch line, rotate, line, go around and around and around, and then connect the edges of the line, and you will have a circle-looking thing. Once you have that outline, you're going to need to waterproof the cardboard base, which can be done with either duct tape or a tarp. But first you're going to to want to put a piece of tape over the hole you used to make your circle. Then, if the base of your molds are relatively small like these, duct tape's probably the quicker option. And for that, you'll just put overlapping strips on the surface. But if you plan on putting the molds on a larger surface, like a table or the garage floor, then a tarp's probably going to be the better option. And since that method is slightly more involved, I'll show you how to do that. So, go ahead and take your tarp material, cut out a piece big enough to cover the entire bottom of the square, and then tape around the entire edge. If you don't tape the entire edge down in place, when you put your circle mold on, the mold will move around due to the tarp not being a firm and tight base. Then find a piece of cardboard long enough for your circumference, in this case 58 inches, and then draw a rectangle 58 inches long and 2 3/4 inches wide, and then cut it out. Once you have cut that strip out, cover the entire thing in duct tape by starting from the bottom edge of the strip and putting half the tape on one side, and then fold the entire other half of the tape on the other edge. Do this on the top and bottom, and then put one strip in the middle. And this should make the entire strip waterproof. Once your strip is nice and taped, take one end and roll it up nice and tight, unravel it, and then roll it from the other end. This is going to make it a lot easier to form your strip to the circle that you drew. Then once you have your base and circle thing completed, you're going to need to make a bazillion small strips of tape. And I would recommend using scissors, because after a while of tearing duct tape with your fingers are going to start to feel funny.
Youch.
Place your roll-up strip on the outline of the circle you drew and tape it down. And what I found works the best is if you take these pieces of tape and you fold it in half like that, and you want to hold this down so it doesn't move, and then stick that piece of tape on like that. And we will go along the entire perimeter of the circle, making sure that the wall of the mold itself is always on this line here of the circle you drew. Then with whatever excess material you have on the end of your strip, put a piece of tape over it and kind of squish it into place. And if you did everything correctly, you should have something that looks like this. And now the final thing to do with the mold is put little strips of tape all along the inside, so that way your mold is pretty much waterproof. You will probably find that a bit of moisture gets through the actual cardboard, but it's not a big deal. As long as you tape the outside and the inside, it should retain most of its moisture. Once you have this outside and inner ring taped, it's time to cut your pipe to fit the bar. And this blue dimension will be how long to cut the pipes. So for 45, 2 3/4 inches long, 25, 2 1/2 inches, 10, 2 inches, 5, 1 1/2 inches. And these lengths of the pipes are going to be slightly longer than the actual weight itself to help prevent concrete pouring into the pipe. Alright, whichever mold you're making, grab the corresponding pipe piece and then find the center of the mold. You can go off your hole, you can feel it, and then get 2 relatively thin strips of duct tape. Stick one at the base here, and you want to put it kind of low because you want the concrete to bond to the actual pipe itself and not the duct tape. Then you can sort of eyeball where the center is. And then take your other piece of duct tape, stick it on the opposite side of the pipe, and then seat it like that. At this point, if you don't have rebar, you can just pour the concrete straight into here. But if you are using the same materials I am, then use the chicken wire really however you want. I just ended up segmenting the entire package into 2 9-inch rolls and 1 6-inch roll on the miter saw. I then unwrap these rolls and trim them into 9-inch by 5-inch rectangles, and smaller random sizes for the 25, 10, and 5-pound plates from that 1 6-inch roll. Now with rebar, it should be cheaper if you can buy longer pieces, but 3/8 by 48 inch fit easily in my car, and I didn't need to spend extra time cutting it shorter. There are different thicknesses, but 3/8 inch will give you plenty of strength in your weight plates, while being thin enough to make bending into a circle by hand or with the assistance of a vise an easy-ish task. Try your best to make a circle between 13 and 16 inches in diameter. So for the visual folks, it's going to be a layer of concrete first, and then 4 9-inch by 5-inch rectangles of chicken wire, a circular piece of rebar, a layer of concrete, and then 4 more pieces of 9-inch by 5-inch chicken wire, and then the final layer of concrete. And the concrete I chose is this Quikrete 5000, 5000 denoting the compressive strength in PSI. And this material should be durable enough to withstand your lifting of weight usage. If you choose this concrete, just note that it does have pebbles and rocks of various sizes in it, which will add strength and rigidity to the material itself, but will mean if you don't flatten it out, you could get little rocks popping up here and there. So to get started mixing, you need to have your protective equipment on. This is going to include, most importantly, your respirator or your dust mask if you don't have one, as well as your protective eyewear. Also important are going to be some type of gloves, as well as clothing that covers up your skin. All this equipment is going to help protect you against concrete burns, which occur when concrete dust comes in contact with your skin and moisture, for example sweat, and then the curing process begins. And these types of burns, if not treated, can be equivalent to a really bad sunburn. Don't freak out though, because concrete burns usually take a long time, hours to develop. However, if you have more sensitive skin, you may develop them quicker. So if you're worried, just wash your exposed areas off with soap and water within a few hours and you should be just fine. And if you're not worried, I still suggest you take a good shower at the end of the day because concrete can still soak through your long sleeve clothing. Take your concrete bag, you can cut the top halfway to make it easy to pour, and then dump the whole thing into one of your buckets. From there, take your bucket and go ahead and weigh it. And this is going to be your total dry weight of concrete. Now keep in mind that your bucket is going to be 2 pounds. So whatever weight is read on the scale, subtract 2 pounds, and that's going to be the total weight of the concrete itself. Now once you get the total weight of whatever your concrete bag is dry, what I found to work best with the bucket and simple scale setup is if I scoop out 5 to 8 pounds of dry concrete into a separate bucket until I reach the desired total weight of roughly 46 to 47 pounds. You could also just get a wheelbarrow or something and mix multiple bags together and then just scoop out and weigh whatever you needed. I'd recommend writing down your total dry and wet weights as well as your mixing process so you can have some type of material to reference in the future. When you have everything set up and you're ready to mix water into the concrete, what I found to work well without the aid of power tools is if I have a separate bucket, and what I'll do is I'll scoop out a small amount of the dry mixture into the bucket and then pour a small amount of water in there as well. Mix that up until all the dry concrete is gone and it's all moist, and then repeat that process until I've mixed all the concrete together with water. As far as the proper amount of water you need to mix into your concrete, this is largely going to be dependent on the size of your bag. In this case, I have 50-pound bags, and for this type of concrete, the recommended amount is a little bit less than half a gallon. However, I have found that using roughly 1 gallon of water turns the concrete into sort of a slushy consistency, which in my opinion is ideal for mixing together easier, as well as making it easier to smooth out and form to your molds. Just take a look at the back of your concrete bags, and you should find a whole information panel of a lot of juicy knowledge you can refer to. When you are satisfied with the consistency of the mixture, it's a good idea to weigh the entire thing, so that way you'll have your total wet bucket weight, and you'll notice when compared to your total dry bucket weight, you'll have an increase of anywhere from 4 to 8 pounds of water weight. Then last thing before you start pouring, figure out how much total weight of concrete you actually need to pour into your molds in order to make an accurate 45 pound plate or 25 or whatever. And the reason why I have all of my plates weighing at least 1 to 2 pounds extra is because 1, you want to account for any finishing work you might want to do, such as rounding the edges down or smoothing out the surfaces. And 2, you want to account for any weight lost due to excess water evaporation. Now, I cannot give you a definitive answer because it's really going to depend on your climate and materials, but I would expect anywhere from 1 to 2 pounds of water to evaporate out of your 45 pound plates, and then this much for the rest. That being said, if you use the same size rebar as me, then these two will basically cancel each other out because this also weighs like 2 pounds. The weight of the chicken wire is basically nothing, so it doesn't matter. Either way, just add 1 to 2 pounds of extra material onto all of your plates because they'll turn out better if all you have to do is shed weight as opposed to trying to add weight, especially if you try to add to your already cured plates. Just try and do at least 1 experimental plate so you know what to expect. Now, if you have a strong base on your mold, you can just put the entire thing on a scale and weigh it as you go, obviously accounting for the weight of the entire mold itself. But since these ones are made out of cardboard to be cheap, the base is not very strong, especially when supporting 45 pounds. And if you try and lift it or put it on a small scale, it may bend and overflow or even break. So using these molds with buckets, I found that it works well to figure out the total weight I need to bring the bucket down to in order to know that I have moved roughly 46 to 47 pounds out of the bucket into the mold itself. And because most cheap bathroom scales won't weigh anything less than 10 pounds, you can just weigh yourself with the bucket, and then you can figure out how much it starts to weigh as you're emptying concrete into the mold. Since I am adding material to strengthen the concrete, the first layer I'm going to put in is going to be roughly 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch thick. And I'll make sure I smooth out that first layer, making it all even and consistent. Then from there, I'll add the first 4 pieces of chicken wire, as well as that circular piece of rebar. And then I'll stick another layer of concrete on top, and then the final 4 pieces of chicken wire, and then the final layer of concrete. Once you got your mold filled, you can smooth it out using whatever tools and method you prefer. Shaking the molds around lightly will also help to get any pesky air bubbles to the surface. Just be gentle, because the molds don't have your lunch money, and they are made of cardboard, so they are fragile. So, once you have finished molding the plates, I'd recommend you either take a trash bag or leftover tarp material and cut it out so you have a piece that's big enough to cover the surface of the mold. This is going to keep moisture in the mold longer, allowing for a more solid curing process to take place. Now, if you want to mark into the concrete how much each plate weighs, you can either scribble in it with a stick or make some sort of stencil. However, before you do this, you need to wait at least 2 hours for your concrete to firm up. Otherwise, your concrete is going to be too mushy to hold any type of form. Also, making your own stencils can be cheap and easy. I made these ones by printing out the weight numbers and gluing it to a piece of plywood, then cutting it out on the bandsaw. I also put screws and glue into the entrance cuts to hold everything together. Once you mark up your concrete however you want, just make sure to put your tarp or trash bag back over the mold, and then wait at least 1 to 2 days. I'd recommend 2 days. Once you've waited those 2 days, you can take your plates out of the molds, and when you do, you'll probably notice that the bottom of your plates still have excess moisture on them, so I'll flip them over or lean them against a wall for an extra 2 days. Also, if concrete happens to pour inside your tube, that can easily be knocked out with a screwdriver, and then sandpaper to smooth it down. Now, this wait time of 4 days I have found to be important, because not only do you want your concrete to cure more thoroughly, but you want to know how heavy your plates actually are without the weight of excess water inside that will evaporate later. If the plates still are dark and have dark spots, that means there's still excess moisture that's going to evaporate. But with the Quikrete 5000 at least, once it turns to a nice white uniform color, then you should be okay to use them. And for those wondering, the molds will be reusable to an extent, the most reusable portion being the circumference strip, while the cardboard base is about a 50-50 between needing only minor repairs and needing to be completely replaced. I'd recommend only using each piece 2 or 3 times to maintain consistent sized plates. Then once your plates are dry, it is okay to weigh them and see how close you are to your goals. From there, you can use whatever tools you have to do your finishing work. Just know that if you choose an angle grinder to shed a couple pounds or round the edges, it will produce a tremendous amount of dust, especially with a concrete grinding wheel like this. And there's also the potential for the small little pebbles inside to fling out, so just make sure at the bare minimum you are wearing some type of mask so you don't breathe all the dust in, as well as ear and eye protection. I would highly recommend some type of face shield. Also, it's not a bad idea to do this outside if you don't want everything in your garage caked with concrete dust. Then once you have ground off what you need to, your plates will be ready to use. Of course, whatever coatings or paint you want to put on will be completely optional. I just used this specific trowel patch mainly because it was cheap, but also because I wanted my plates to have some sort of grippy texture, and I liked the way they looked. I just used a couple cheap paint brushes to coat the surface and edge, as well as fill in any holes left behind by air bubbles, and then I would wait either a day or half a day to flip it over and coat the other side. Now, in terms of how much extra weight this is going to add to your plates, my 45s would have roughly a pound of coating, my 25s would have roughly half a pound, and then my 10s and 5s wouldn't have anything of significant value. However, before you go out and buy any type of coating, make sure you know what you're getting. If you are not constrained by a budget, then I would not get this, but instead purchase some type of 4 3/4 gallon bucket of concrete filler sealer. Not only will you get more material for your dollar, but you wouldn't have to worry about buying this, as well as some type of separate concrete sealer, which in turn would basically be the same price as that big old bucket. That being said, if this is all you can afford, just know over time, small little flakes of the coating might peel off, as well as potentially staining the ends of your bar and or floor, if some of the coating leaks into your plastic tube and is not cleaned out thoroughly, or if you keep your plates on the ground and move them around down there. None of these things should cause significant issues on your plates, they just won't be the most aesthetically pleasing. And that's how you make your own weights for cheap. You should be able to use these for almost all your exercises, but even though they have this neato burrito black coating, they are not bumper plates. So do not use these for snatches, clean and jerks, or really any movement where there's a potential for you to drop the weights from overhead. Large chunks of concrete could break off and get flung in an unsafe direction. Also, I'd highly recommend some type of bar catching device, like these safety arms, for when you fail an exercise and need to dump the weight, as well as a shock absorbing material for when you want to deadlift, such as thick carpet, rubber mats, or even grass could work. Just avoid dropping the weights directly onto any hard surface, and they should last you a long time. Thanks for watching. I apologize this video took so long. If you have any questions or run into any issues, leave them in the comment section and I'll try my best to answer them for you. And if you're wondering about this weight rack itself, then I'll leave a link in the description to my video about how you can make one. So in conclusion, if you found this video to be helpful, as well as maybe enjoyable, then please go ahead and share it with your friends or anyone you know trying to start their own home gym for cheap. And lastly, only if you feel like I earned it, then please consider subscribing as well as liking or even disliking this video. So again, thank you for your time. I hope this helped and have a great day. Oh, spider web.